away. So can you comment on that?
I mean, companies, there's like 3 companies that are working on encryption for quantum computing. Sandbox is the one that comes to mind, Sandbox AQ. So that there's going to be, and Eric Schmidt is the chairman of that. So there's people working on it. Somebody's going to make a lot of money solving that problem.
One by your government.
I don't know if blockchain is the biggest problem we'll have.
Any
when
bank,
that
all
happens.
money, yeah.
Your question? I have a lot more problems.
Thank you. Well, AJ building an AI marketplace, so it's easier to.
Is that pitch? It's context.
And the question is, what kind of market opportunities are protected from OpenAI? Kind of, where do you see the kind of niche where there will be a kind of scalable network effects protecting startups from OpenAI and other beginners?
I can try to take that. Yeah, I think OpenAI is becoming the new AWS, where everybody's gonna look at their dev day and how many startups got killed. So last week, with their dev day, I think there's probably 20-25 startups that got killed. I think, but the same philosophy that AWS has, which is they're really good at infrastructure, EC2, S3, middleware, and then they leave the application space to application developers that understand business logic, understand UX. So I think that space seems safe. But OpenAI, I mean, they'll keep at it, and sort of RAG, fine tuning, model development. They're probably working on GPT-5 already. 10 trillion parameter model. Microsoft will keep giving them as much money as they need. So, I would stay away from what could be roadkill on the OpenAI roadmap.
So what will not be
applications with UX and business.
Ben, you're the best person to answer this, so
Okay, I'm laughing because early on we did not invest in horizontal infrastructure plays. We did a few LLM investment. Brian was one of them, but didn't go the Gen AI direction because, as I said, I don't think it works for the enterprise. Different use cases and context, but now everybody says, we cut up, we invested in all the platforms, the fundamental models, it's done. Now it's all about application layers. So yes, it's all about verticalization and applications, but I tell people, look, it's about solutions. You can't just come in with the best machine vision for this problem. You need to put in the context of solving the problem of that customer. So that hasn't changed fundamentally, the way you build a company. Can you deliver an end-to-end solution to your problems that your customer is facing? Not just, I've got the world's best email targeting, whatever. I mean, that's not going to get you differentiated. That means you're more a feature of a larger platform, at which point, yes, you're going to have an extension event every time OpenAI has a new announcement. But if you really build that vertical end-to-end layers of providing solutions, where's your data coming from, how are you differentiating, building proprietary IP around your models, and how you create value, ultimately utility value for your users, that's how you're going to sustain. That's going to have a long-term value for the business. Otherwise, you're probably not going to make it. Or should say it early.
I think it's hard right now, right? Even in the application layer. Like the funny thing about generative AI, I think, is the fact that it's actually it's like a new technology that actually is very easy for an incumbent to use and build a new solution. Much easier than cloud or even like mobile, right? If I wanted to rebuild an incumbent onto cloud, it's actually really hard, right? But here, I mean, that's one of the things we've struggled with when we're looking to invest into these new applications. What are you doing? The best incumbent within your space, it's super tech native. Could they actually take those same LLMs and build something similar? I think that's the hard part.
Why do you do applications outside of OpenAI? They are building their marketplace.
I'm going to kill it here. Ben, you get to say some words about that conversation.
I represent that long. So this is a question for Caroline. Can you tell me are you interested in companies that are involved in carbon capture? Are you interested in companies that are involved in greenhouse gas mitigation? Are you interested in companies that are working on clean energy generation? And just in that order, what interests you?
yes to all of it if there is a software and data-centric focus in the business model. So and in carbon capture, so we see that kind of follow the hardware deployment. So for example, in Fund 1, we invested a lot in like operational software for wind and solar because that was ripe. In Fund 2, this was more on battery storage and EV charging infrastructure. We see, like, we're looking at carbon capture and hydrogen space. We see that kind of that operational efficiency software type plays follow the hardware investments. So yes, but we like to see the majority of the business growth come from software data.
Hello, my name is JD. So my question relates more to the cold topics, right? So we talked a lot about AI this, AI that. So I was wondering how do the metrics look and what kind of funding are like maybe less interesting topics, you know, like social networks or crowdfunding platforms or maybe government tech or anything along those lines? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. I think the question, some of those I would say are like crowdfunding. They're really old, and social networks. There's absolutely, you'd have to be an extraordinarily new idea to get traction. VCs are, for better or for worse, they only care about tomorrow, you know, and they only care about the shooting where the puck is going, and they get lots of things wrong. And when everyone agrees on it, like AI, that's when we lose lots of money and a few people make a fortune. But as an entrepreneur, you got to be shooting where the puck is going. And so, like, if you're talking about an industry that's 15 years old, how many, you got to have something pretty incredible that's transformative of that industry. And the bar is just super high. You got to think about what's new.
But yet Google kind of made it out when,
Oh yeah, that was 5 years after each of me. It wasn't that long.
I would say the graveyard of search was like what Alta Vista got. It's not that big. The graveyard of crowdfunding is the biggest graveyard in the world.
Due to regulation.
This is more of a general question for the panel. I hear a lot about how VCs, when they fund and invest or when they have companies approach them, they tout their resources and how they can help them. Yet you guys all have expressed that a lot of companies still may fail in your spaces. Just want to ask you, why do you think that may be, and how do companies maybe avoid that? Do you have any tips for that?
And this is like startup failure. Like how should VCs? Yeah. That's just part. Startups are experiments, and 9 out of 10 experiments will fail. So that's just the nature of innovation. That's just the nature of disruption. And if you're not failing, you're probably not taking a big enough risk. So I think that's just part of the territory. There's only so much that one can do to control that. But I think how we help, particularly as a strategic investor, it's all the corporate resources that we provide. We try to become a captive customer for a number of our startups, particularly if there is a good relevant fit, etc. We do a lot of customer introductions. So there is a lot VCs do, but ultimately, you have to find product market fit.
Just briefly look at the strategy that the fund you're talking to has. How many investments are they making? Are you actually going to be 1 in 100 or 1 in 10? Our focus is high concentration. We invest in 15 to maybe 20 companies out of each fund. We have a small number of portfolio companies and do a massive amount of diligence before we invest. So that's the annoying part, that we dig very deep, but once we've invested, we stick with you and actually see the business value moving forward. But we're also different to interact with than some of the larger funds, where folks might leave you alone once you're dropped below a certain threshold in their marks.
So, and lots to say. Yes, lead investors are super important, right? So vet them the same way they vet you. Make sure that when they say they do value add, they actually do it. And then it's not just about the good days. Look, we've had plenty of bad days in the last couple of years. So I think Founder will tell you war stories about the ones that actually show up when they have problems and difficulties. We always talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want to know first. We We have a very concentrated portfolio as well. We spend a lot of time with every founders. And so that's one aspect. The other is advice to raise from VCs that are the same stage you are. You know, there were a lot of Series A guys cutting seed checks as an option for the A. Truth is they don't care about you. They won't spend the time with you. It feels good to have a great brand name on your cap table, but the truth is you're not getting any value. It might do you a disservice later. So, you know, you might be better off with a smaller check or emerging managers that's going to work his heart out because he wants you to be super successful, right? So that's one element. But you look at failure outside of what can we do as VCs to help a portfolio succeed. A lot of it is, you know, well known. You know, helping you with fundraising, introduction, customers, you name it, or even talent and access. You know, two things that are killer of startups are free. One is co-founder, you know, difficulties and challenges. That's an extension event most of the time. You manage to survive a couple, but it's hard. Then you have, you know, not being able to raise money. I don't agree with that. It's like you've just failed to execute properly, right? So did you take the wrong term, wrong strategy, wrong go-to-market? You know, you hit a wall, that happens, right? But it's really related to execution most of the time. You can try to mitigate that. And then the last thing is the speed at which you can learn. I mean, what environment do you execute into? If your product market feedback loop is 6 to 9 months because of just the market you are in, that's super hard. It means you're going to need to raise more money or really not spend much to make it last longer so that you can get to that validation proof points that you're going to need for the next round. So I think about that when you're building and executing. It's like, are you in a fast learning environment? Are you having feedback loop constantly coming back at you or not? And if so, adjust your amount of capital raised and how much you're spending, right?
Control your own destiny. I think like a lot of founders are thinking about this now, right? Is like, if you can control, how do you control your own destiny? Yeah. There's a certain amount of there's a certain amount of revenue you bring in, a certain amount of spend, and then like that's the what's left over is like the capital you need, right? And so we found like a lot of our companies in the last like year or so have figured out that like, hey, actually we can have full control over our destiny of do we fail? Do we run off the cliff? Or do we actually figure out a way to be cash flow positive? And we never have to like go and talk to a VC ever again, right? And for some founders, like that's the path they want to.
There's one caveat to that.
Yeah.
I think the exception is corporations and your customers want you to be something to them, which sometimes venture capitalists are actually it's your FU money to customers because you don't want to build what they ask you want to build what they need. Sometimes it means firing your customers and just building something different. In situations like that, you won't have a choice. But again, necessities is multiple inventions.
The number one cause of death is running out of cash. And so you either get that from customers, investors, or lowering expenses. And
That's a symptom though, right?
It's a symptom.
Yes, it's not really the cause.
Well, okay. We're going to do a final question, and then you guys can maybe take a break and grab a quick drink, and then we've got 4 presentations, and then we're just going to get into some vicious networking.
All right, thanks a lot. I won't give a pitch for our awesome new stealth startup in AI, but never heard that. My question for you is for B2C companies, and just like to hear from each one of you, in B2C, your top 3, what you just consider the hottest spaces, like what, in your view. That's it. And why?
Business to consumer and business to consumer spaces.
Business to consumer, meaning you're selling to regular folks.
I have no idea.
Prize panel here.
I might do a handful.
Gaming, video gaming, man, just like going there with Gen AI.
I ran into Vivek, he was on the same flight to me landing here. We invested in Superhuman at an $8 million valuation when they were a very consumer-facing company, but we knew that that was going to be like people that work at companies have problems with too much email. I'm sure Ben Black gets how many emails a day from guys like me. So, you know, I think consumer companies that look like they're going to potentially get in the enterprise to get their attention, and I like to think sometimes, is it cheaper to go with the technology than to pay a human to do that? And would I want to quit my job and do sales for that company? You know, like I sometimes get these tests to avoid just irrationally jumping off a cliff with everybody on a panel. Here's the next one. Do we have time for a last question, or should we get into the startups? Final question over here in Japan. Here we go.
Well, my question is very simple. So do you usually invest pre-revenue startups? So then what is key points of change?
So the question is, do you invest in pre-revenue startups and...
No, how do you evaluate them?
Yeah, pre-revenue.
What are your criteria for pre-revenue?
Maybe I would just say that San Francisco, Silicon Valley, more than anywhere in the world, has a funder for every stage on the continuum from pre-product, pre-revenue, to a little bit of revenue, to a little bit more revenue, to late seed, Series A, blah, 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 to pre-IPO. And so the trick there is to find an investor that does your stage while you're there. I remember as a founder, and I've raised over $300 million for my own startups, going to CVCs, and they said, come back when you have some customers. And I came back, hey, look, I got some customers. Come back when you have more customers, more revenue. Then I came back with more customers, more revenue. So it's too late stage. The multiple's too hot. It's not working. Like, how can I get this Goldilocks person's checkbook?
They just didn't like the company, man.
That's actually a fair point. But I think that the key is to understand where you are in the continuum and who are the right ones to target. Ben gave some advice on that. So, quick pause if anyone wants to grab a drink, do it now. And thank you so much, everybody.